Okay, good evening. The sheets are just over there. The halacha shir this evening is entitled Paying the Babysitter on Time. As you know, we try to find a halachic topic related somehow to the parsha, and that is why we've chosen this topic, because in this week's parsha, Parshas Kiseitse, we have a whopping 74 mitzvahs. That's impressive, because if there are 613 in total, that means more than 10% feature in this week's parsha. So there's a lot of halachic topics to choose from. Let's take a look at the background psukim. If you're if you're listening online, then please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. Paragraph 1. So the pasuk says, "Lo sa'ashok socher ani." Do not hold back the payment of a poor person. Ani ve'evyo in me'achicha, ve'migercha she'ba'artzecha v'sharecha. You've got to pay him on the day he does the work. Don't let the sun set. Because he is a poor person. And he's looking for you. He's sort of for his life. And he shouldn't call out to Hashem because he hasn't got what to eat. He hasn't been paid. And there'll be a sin on your account. Okay, that is the background. The two background psukim. Now the Sefer Chinuch in Mitzvah Tov Kuf Peiches discusses this mitzvah, and he says something very interesting. He says Misharshe HaMitzvah, which is of course always the way he begins. He doesn't say Shorish HaMitzvah because he doesn't know for certain. Maybe Hashem has other reasons for the mitzvah. Maybe there are many reasons, but he always starts off Misharshe HaMitzvah, of the background reasons for the mitzvah. Perhaps conjecture is Mashimavua because of Kikol Sachir Baroiv Tzarech L'Sachir Mzanosov. In general, people work because they need to eat. They've got to pay the mortgage. They've got to have a roof over their head and food to eat, and therefore, that is why most people are going to need a wage. Al kain ein roi la'acher loy lemzanosov. You shouldn't delay paying him so that he has what to eat. Because he is a poor person, he is turning to you to sustain his soul. Or Pirshu Zichron Livrocha, the Chazal explain the Gemara B'Metzia Kufyu Beis, al haschar hazeh Allah b'kevesh v'nit lebe'ilon. He's sort of put his life at risk. He's gone up a steep ramp. He is he's climbing a tree to pick the fruit. Whatever his job is, it could involve risk. Now, Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to imbue us with chesed. So part of that is to make sure this person who's turning to you for his livelihood, for his daily bread, he's risking his life sometimes. You've got to sort of be compassionate to him and pay him quickly. You've got to pay clockwork when he needs it. And furthermore, because the more compassionate we are, the more we ready and prepare ourselves to be makabel the tov from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us, and therefore the more we become a kli, the more compassionate we become, the more worthy we are of receiving bracha. Okay, that's the chinuch. And he carries on and says, as he always does, apart from giving background suggested reasons for mitzvahs, he also gives some of the protim, the details, and he says, you've got to pay on time. Now, what does that mean? What does on time mean? What is the zman? That means, if you hire a person to do work for you by the day, for example, let's say your garden is overgrown. So you get a gardener to come and you're going to pay him £100 a day to clean your garden. He's a schir yom. So on Monday, he's going to come next Monday, and you pay him X amount for the day. You've got to pay him the following night, the entire night you've got, which means on sunrise on Tuesday morning, that's your deadline. So he works for you on Monday. You've got the whole of Monday night until daybreak, until dawn, sunrise on Tuesday morning to pay him. And at that point, that's what the pasuk means when it says, do not delay paying him in the morning. That means the person who's worked on the Monday, let's say, you've got that night until the morning to pay him. The schir laila, say for example, you want to hire a security guard to watch your house, a night watchman the whole night, then go v'kalayom. Then you pay him in the next day, i.e., let's say he's going to watch your house on Monday night, from 7 p.m. till 7 a.m., you've got till you've got till dusk, till shkia, till sunset on the Tuesday to pay him. Which is this week's parsha. Now, that is a schir yom. Continues the chinuch, schir shais, but if you're paying the person per hour, or for a small period of time, not the whole day, then go v'kol hayom. So for example, you hire a plumber to come and fix your broken tap, or a dry cleaner to clean your suit, or anything else of that nature, which is going to be an hour or two or something like that, then go v'kol hayom. So for example, let's say you take your car to the mechanic, and he's going to, you need a couple of hours to fix the problem with your car. So let's say that's next Monday afternoon between 1 and 3 p.m. So then you've got the rest of the day to pay him. That's what it says. Schar shoyz go v'kol hayom, v'schir shoyz shalaylo go v'kol halaylo. If, in our situation, paying the babysitter on time, say that you ask, you hire a babysitter to come along next Wednesday evening for 2 hours because you're out from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. So then you've got the whole night to pay, which means at sunrise the next morning, that's when Lo Solin kicks in. And that is all codified in the Shulchan Aruch in box number 3. This is in Chosh Mishpat Siman Shin Lametes. In Sif Aleph, the Mechaber says, Mitzvah los yischar zmanoi v'im ichra over belav. You've got a mitzvah to pay on time, and if you don't pay on time, you violate a lav. Jumping to Sif Gimel, Ezel zman, schir yoim, yesh lo zman litne kol halayla, as we just described. If it's a day work, a full day, then you've got the whole night to pay. And schir shois, if it's just for an hour or two or a few hours, im kol ha-schiros b'yom, if the schiros, the hiring period, stops during the day, yesh tashlim kol ha-siyom, then you've got the rest of the day to pay. Im kol ha-balayla, yesh tashlim kol ha-salayla, then you've got the rest of the night to pay. Now, what type of workers are included? And we'll start talking practical in a few moments. What type of workers are included? Well, the Shulchan Aruch says in Sivav, the bottom box, Nosen talisa le'uman le'taknon v'kablanos. If you give your talis to a worker to fix it, either some needs some tailoring, some repair, or to dry clean it or something like that, v'gomra, and he does the job. Kol zman sha'talis biyad ha'uman ein over. Whilst the talis is in the dry cleaners, and you say you're taking your suit, you mess up, you dirty your suit. So you got to take your suit into the dry cleaners. Today is Thursday. You say, when's it ready? Monday. So when it's sitting there Monday, I can't manage to go on Monday to pick it up. I'm busy. I can't manage Tuesday. I go Wednesday. So whilst the actual suit is ready to be picked up, and it's biyad ha'omen, it's sitting in by the dry cleaner, my car's with the mechanic or whatever it is, ain't over. But nosnulo, once he's given you the suit, he's given you the car back, then afilu b'chatzi hayoim kiven sheshokol of chama over mishum baltalin, because he is a schir shois. He's done a couple of hours work, and therefore as soon as he's given you the item back, then you've got the rest of that either day or night to pay up. Now, and that is also mentioned in the Bir Halacha. If you look at the top of the next page, if the item is not picked up, although the repairman or the dry cleaner has notified the owner that it's ready, the owner doesn't have to pick it up straight away, and Baltolin doesn't apply. So the Bir Halacha says, "V'chol dvarenu hu dafkim kva hevi ha'pu'ul lebeis balabayis v'kibul mimenu." So only when I've actually taken a receipt of the suit, or I've got my car back, that's when I've got the obligation to pay. Okay. Now, what about children? What about if you hire kids? Have you got to pay the kids on time? You'd hire children, for example, let's say, and it's become a new thing. I asked students in school, how do they get their income? What's their source when I would discuss this sort of topic? So most of them would tell me babysitting. That's their income. Occasionally they would do cheder and things like that. But sometimes they do dog walking, right? Interesting. So you've got a 12-year-old boy who's your neighbor, and you can't be bothered, you're tired, and you want your neighbor to walk the dog. Does Baltolin apply to a child? So the Chavetz Chaim says in Avas Chesed, box number 5, Gam bekotten sheschore le'eze pu'ula, shaykh by kol hadinim hanal. It applies to children as well. And then the Chavetz Chaim in the footnote, he says, I've seen people, they employ the services of a child for whatever service, and they say, yeah, we'll see you right, and then they end up, they don't pay anything. V'sheloi kedin ovdi. It's not correct. To isa kvisha schar sochir, the prohibition to withhold the payment of a worker, shayach afilu b'mleches pruta achas. It applies even for a very small amount. For afilu b'katan shayach zeh, and it applies even to a child. Interesting. Now, let's just talk practical. Babysitting is a great example. The babysitter is hired to come around, let's say Wednesday nights between 8 and 11 p.m. and you want to pay them. When does Bal Talin kick in? When does this issa of holding back the payment, when does it kick in? So first of all, it only applies, the Aruch HaShulchan makes clear, if the worker asks for the payment and if the employer has money. So, let's say, for example, you hire a babysitter and they pay, let's say they charge $10 an hour, and you've got to pay them $30 for that evening. So, when should Bal Talin kick in? So, it should kick in, let's say 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. It will kick in by dawn the next morning because you've got the whole night to pay him. Because for a schir shois, it's that period of time. It's that night you got to pay him. If it was during the day, then you've got till sunset to pay him. But it only applies if the babysitter says to you, can you please settle up? I've been here for 3 hours, that's $30 please. Only if they actually ask for the payment and if the employer has money. So if you look at the Aruch HaShulchan in box 6, the first box, Ein balabayis over baltolin, elim kein tovu hasochir, oishesholach shliach litvoy menu. Only if the worker either claimed the money themselves, they asked for payment themselves, or they sent a rep to do so. Ava below tvia ein over, but without asking them, they're not over the issa. That's number one. V'chein im ein loy mois, and so too, if he doesn't have money, afal pisha tovu ein over toksiv itcha k'sheyesh itcha, when you're withholding that which you've got and you're not paying him for whatever reason. That's number one. Now, another very important rule is, it doesn't apply, the violation will not be transgressed if the worker agrees to be paid later. And that's the important thing, that sometimes we don't have cash on us, we don't have money, or we don't do the bank transfer, and we'll say, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, the next day. That's a problem, because really you've got to pay by, let's say it's in the evening, you've got to pay by dawn the next morning. But if you agree to be paid later, then that's okay. And that's in the Shach in Siman Shin Lamed Tes, in the next box in paragraph 6. He says, he quotes the Sefer Chasidim, that Titne imoy lo shelo tzeh bal tolim pul hasochir ve'ein b'zeh masna masha kosa b'Torah. If you agree, it's not violating what the Torah says, you're allowed to agree these things, and he gives proofs for it. Now, another interesting thing, when we said that it only applies if the worker asks for payment, sometimes babysitters, especially if they're sort of youngsters, they feel a bit embarrassed to ask. So they may have agreed a price, or they haven't even agreed a price, but they just feel a bit awkward to ask. Does it apply then? So Rabbi Yashuv, interestingly, quoted in a sefer called The Halachas of Other People's Money, he says that if the worker is too shy to ask outright, then you must still be paid on time. So the fact they didn't ask isn't your get out, because they were just too embarrassed to ask. Now, another situation which also is quite relevant, sometimes you have a sort of a standing, rolling arrangement with the babysitter. You've got your go-to babysitter, and you come on Wednesday, and I also need you on Thursday, and next week I've actually got a busy week, and I need you, and you'll settle up at the end of the month. So again, the poskim say, and this is the Chofetz Chaim and Avos Chesed, if the common practice is to pay that worker at the end of the month or similar, then the payments can wait until then. That's the Chofetz Chaim and Avos Chesed. He says, you sort of wait till the end of the month, and then you sort of clock up your hours, and you do a timesheet, and then you pay it, and then you submit it. If that's the common practice, then the payments can wait until then. And in terms of a babysitter, it depends very much what the arrangement is. If the babysitter is hired as a one-off, then you must be paid, bo bayom on that day, as we've described, unless you've agreed beforehand. And if the babysitter is hired like on a steady basis, and then there is no deadline for the time of payment, since many people don't pay their regular babysitters after each session, and that's Moshe Feinstein, that's the source of that. So it's relevant, and it's important halachas to know. There are serious isurim at stake over here, and it's very important to make sure either you're mekayim the mitzvah of paying on time. It could even be a taxi. There are lots of a gardener. any type of contracted job, by the job, a dry cleaner, plumber, electrician, it's very important to be makayim the mitzvah of paying on time. And if for whatever reason you haven't got the cash or the things available, you don't plan to pay now, to just agree it beforehand when you're going to pay. Based on Pesukim in this week's parsha, and like I said, just to summarize, the chinuch says the reason is because often the person is turning to you for his sustenance, and therefore it's important to be compassionate to him, A, and B, to make yourself into a compassionate person, that you're muchshel lekabel all the tov that Kodesh Baruch Hu wants to give. There is a difference between a schir yom and a schir sha'is. A schir yom, if you hire him for the day, then the bal tolin deadline is the next period of time. So, for example, if you hire him on Monday, then it will kick in you've got the whole of Monday night until dawn on Tuesday morning. If it's Monday night, you've hired him to be the security night watchman, then you've got the whole of the next day to pay by sunset to the next day. But for a schir sha'is, then it's that tkufa. So you hire him for a couple of hours during the day, you've got to pay by the end of that day. And so too, similar to the night. It applies even to children. And like I said, it only applies if the worker asks, or if they're too shy to ask outright, you've still got to be paid on time. And if the common practice is to wait until the end of the month or a similar time frame, then that would be okay.